that that is what we spend most of our free time doing. We sit through an endless stream of short form content. We watch big budget TV shows. We play AAA games. But above all, we consume. For more than 4 hours of every single day, all that we do is consume video, according to a 2024 report by Ofcom. And I bet you could tell me all about your favorite characters and favorite video games, and you could answer if I asked you about what music artists you listen to. Of course you could. We define ourselves based on what we like to consume. But what if I asked you a different question? What if I asked you, what have you created? What have you made that you can be really, truly proud of? That makes you want to say to yourself that I made that. Well, 68% of US adults wish they had used more of their creativity to do just that, according to a 2019 Ipsos poll, while a 2024 poll by OnePoll suggests that 72% wish the same. Why? Well, starting a new project can be intimidating. Starting what is essentially an entirely new hobby can leave many people feeling paralyzed from choice or from scope. And sometimes it might feel like starting that particular project is a downright unattainable, impossible task, which is why I want to tell you a story of a project that really did set out to attempt and achieve the impossible. What was it? Well, it was a project that attempted to take the entirety of life and civilization from unicellular organism to interstellar empire and turn it into a game that you can play. And importantly, while staying faithful to the science behind it all. Surely, such a task would require tremendous amounts of resources and planning, and of course, money, but also experts to consult and professionals to program it all. But that was no reality, not for this project. This project was started by a bunch of overambitious nerds on an internet forum. It's currently being programmed by a team of mostly unpaid volunteers, and it's free and open source. This project should not exist. According to every single law of the market and of just pure common sense, this project should have died at its inception, but it didn't. It survived more than 10 grueling years of glacial paced development, of key people coming and going, and of motivation and enthusiasm dying out, just for a new person to come and start where the previous one left off. All while being laughed at and ridiculed at the very idea of it. But it's still here. Sure, it's still being developed, and sure, it's just a small bit of what was originally planned, but it's playable. It has a store page, it has an entire in game wiki, and it's been translated into multiple languages. And all that's kept it alive for all these things to be possible is the sheer willpower and hours of work put into it by online volunteers, most of whom were not professionals, but hobbyists and enthusiasts. The fact that this game made it onto the store shelves of Steam is a testament to the fact that you don't need to be a specialist or have infinite funding, or in this case, any funding at all, to create. Even if what you're creating can literally be considered impossible, especially if you had a big company behind it. I joined this project recently, and I remember seeing the first ever change I made to the game, some tiny, minuscule, barely noticeable thing being shown in a trailer. And I remember saying to myself out loud at that moment that I made that. I was in the credits of that game. And a few weeks before that, I didn't even know that was possible. That it was possible for the average person, let alone a 15-year-old teenager with no experience, to be part of something like that. But as it turns out, there are entire classes of things that we can make that never seem to cross our minds. You can design a board game. You can make an entire language. You can even, with today's tools, design DNA. In the infinite stream that we call the internet, you are bound to find niches you didn't even know existed. You're bound to find hobbies that you're able to start right then and there in front of your computer in your home. And with just how big the internet is, you will find something. And when you do, there will always be a community of people already doing that. Maybe ridiculously niche thing that you just found. Take video game development, for example. Making a video game can seem like a tremendous task, even if what you're doing is not recreating life from scratch. It requires many moving parts and complex components and specialized skills to make it. And it's not the type of thing that can seem like people do regularly for fun as a hobby. For most people, video game development is a business. But reality could not be further from that. Game development is more than a business. Game dev is a hobby, and it's a hobby shared by thousands of people. People who come together in events just to make games from scratch in a set amount of time on a set topic. And the biggest one of these game jams, as they're called, had more than 30,000 participants and resulted in more than 7,000 unique games. But of those 30,000 participants, not all of them were developers or programmers or game designers, but also artists and writers and musicians. And I bet many teams would have loved to have people with those skills there to help them. They were certainly not all professionals either. In fact, for many, this just 4-day event was the first time they ever attempted to make a game and learn all of the tools and skills that are required to do so. And many of them succeeded. That's important because I believe that somewhere there is where the main misconception about creating nowadays lies. It's the false assumption that I do not have the skills or I do not have the education to make what I want to make. That for me, that idea, that project is impossible. But that is all that it is, a misconception. Because you can create anything, and impossible projects might be closer than you've ever expected. And not just because I believe in you, or because I know you can do it, or because you need to believe in yourself, but because of the circumstances in which we live in. We live in a time better for individual creation than any other in human history. Take this, for example, the internet, the biggest store of human knowledge ever devised, that you can just hold in your hand at barely no cost and accessible at any time. And just to put into perspective how large of a store of knowledge the internet is, English Wikipedia alone, which is just a fraction of the entire thing, has more than 4.8 billion words. That is 6,000 times longer than the King James Bible. And the internet is more than that. It's not just the biggest library ever conceived, it's the biggest school. You don't need an expensive education to learn to code or draw or make a 3D model because of the hundreds of community-made resources available. There are countless videos and tutorials and explainers about those topics and about some of the most specific things you could think of, just there, available for you to watch or read, and you can self-teach yourself anything, any creative or technical skill you need, at least to the level where you're able to make something meaningful with it. But to do that, you have to change how you think of the internet, from just a place for consuming content and observing other people to a tool and a resource that you can use to learn, to teach yourself the skills you need to make what you want to make. But there is more, because real life is more than just the internet. We have other amazing technologies. We have 3D printers, machines capable of creating any shape we can think of in mere hours, and some of them have them in our rooms. We have computers, pinnacles of technology, and the combination of dozens of years of research and development, able to calculate in seconds what would have previously taken a human hours. And then we have AI, personal, omniscient assistants we can just summon at the typing of a prompt into a box. The impossible? That's already been created, and we are living in a time that would have been science fiction just years ago. And through that, the process, the ability to create has been democratized, made available to so many more people, and it's so much easier than it ever was before. But to use that, you have to be aware of it, which is where I finish my case. The case for creating what you believe to be impossible, for turning just one of the 4 hours we spend every day watching videos into an hour for making something, even if that something does not live up to professional standards, for having the audacity to try and make crazy, ambitious projects, even if you or others don't think you have the skills to do so. And with generative AI slowly closing in on every part of our everyday lives, finding real human creativity might just become hard among a sea of AI, while being able to truly, honestly say that I made that might become a thing we all come to miss. So I'm asking you to try. Try and answer the question of what have you created before AI answers it for you. Thank you.